do you see it as still in a phase where it's a possibility, or is it the inevitable future, and thus, as educators, we have to care about it because that's the future of the world?
It is absolutely inevitable. Absolutely inevitable. Web3 is simply an evolution of most of what the internet exists as today: social media, content creation, storing of data, and just doing it in a way where it's much more empowering. So for educators, they need to learn about this for two reasons. Number one is there's really cool opportunities for educators in Web3. New professional pathway opportunities where there's some cool side hustles that might not be utilizing your educational pedagogical skills, but Web3 needs those. The other thing is that if the students don't have us as trusted advisors for this, even if you think that this is like not a real thing, if you are learned in it, your students will appreciate and admire it. And if they don't learn it from you, they're going to learn it from the influencer on TikTok, or they're going to learn it from the athlete or celebrity on Instagram. And those people don't care about these students like we do.
We're here on the last day at ISTE Live 2022 in New Orleans, and I'm curious what's something that's excited you. You've probably been all out and about in this conference over the last few days. What's something you've seen, presentation you've been a part of that you've liked?
So for me, it's just the people. And I shared this a number of times. If you're an educator and you're at ISTE right now, you're all in on education. It's been a really rough couple years. People are exhausted, burned out. And so after, especially this year, that the world said, we just have to get back to status quo, get back everything that we have gone through over the past couple years. You need to go teach, and you need to do that, and there shouldn't be any issues, shouldn't be any lapse in anything. That's soul sucking for most educators. So to see so many educators here, it's incredible. That for me, I mean, sessions, tech, what people here are all in on education.
Agreed. Yeah, I think we found there were about 14,000 attendees at ISTE this year, which is an amazing number of educators coming together. Couldn't agree more. And also to meet people in person, like meet somebody like you who I've followed and known about, but to be able to sit down and chat with you is amazing. Now, we're going to have a conversation today about Web3, why Web3 is important, why we should care about it. To start, I think let's clarify for our audience, sort of assuming that folks don't know some of the base terminology, or that it's a little bit sticky, which might actually be part of the point, that there's some kind of inherent complexity built into it. But just for the sake of being able to use terms, let's see if we can clarify some. So I'm going to give it a shot. Okay, so see if my definition of Web3 is correct. Feel free to make any edits that are needed. So my understanding of Web 1 is essentially that Web 1 is information-based internet. It's sort of the first iteration of the internet where people go online to access information. Web 2 emerges once the sort of social media giants come onto the scene and we start using the internet to interact more. But a major criticism of Web 2 is that control is sort of located in those companies. They own our data, we're on their platforms. So Web 3 is really an attempt to regain some of that control, to have more ownership with the individual users, to create a more decentralized internet. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Okay.
You're hired.
Now, NFT, I'm a little bit less clear on. I do know what it is, but not sure if I can give the same kind of summary. It stands for non-fungible token. And essentially what it is it's a way for a person to have that kind of ownership. So if we're trying to own something, you can authentically own it. And the way that it's owned is because it's located somewhere on the blockchain. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And blockchain is also what we're referring to when people are talking about cryptocurrency. So it's all essentially interconnected. Like you can't have Web3 without blockchain, without crypto, without NFTs. Would you say that's correct?
100%.
Okay, cool. All right, so blockchain, if you had to describe the blockchain, just so people can understand, how is it that people have ownership of something and it's no longer owned by like Facebook? Because I think most people's understanding of the internet is probably still that it is rooted in a company owning something where you're hosting your own content on that platform, like we are right now on YouTube, right? That could deplatform us at any time and decide, that we no longer have that content, right? So how does the blockchain change that?
Yeah, not just deplatform, demonetize.
Correct.
Decide that it's not in their best interest and switch the algorithm to something that they feel people want to see, even though you've brought value for so many years, so many hundreds of episodes. It's mind-blowing, but we have to also be a little bit grateful because they gave us the internet for basically free. So the ownership piece is really about transitioning this idea that our data is incredibly valuable. And it allows for commerce, it allows for communities to move forward and be successful and thrive. But why is it centralized in a small group of companies that even though they've provided us value, they are taking so much of the profits based on what we're able to contribute, which is their entire platforms. The blockchain, I actually started to create a list of terms that I hoped a fifth grader could understand, because there's a lot of jargon, there's a lot of buzzwords, and with blockchain, you just basically have to look at it as a large network of people committed to making sure that information is stored, it's validated, it's transparent, and that anyone that puts it onto this network, we agree that that person that authors that content and puts it onto the blockchain, they own it. And so no one can take it, no one can move it. It is there, and if someone would, so to speak, delete it from one of the nodes of this larger network, there's another cluster of that larger network that has that data to refresh it and make sure that it's still there. And so there's no loss, right? I don't know when, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, basically the entire internet went down because Amazon Web Service had some sort of like massive crash. So WhatsApp went down, Facebook went down, Instagram went down, which are all Facebook meta companies that are on Amazon Web Service. So there's this massive centralization of access, of data, of control, of algorithmic decision making, and the blockchain is trying to put that back into the hands of the people so that you can use this secure network to get things done similar to Web 2. We're not we're not going like Ready Player One tomorrow, but being able to have that system in place, similar to an Amazon Web Service where or a Google Drive, but you get to own it and the community gets to support you in ensuring the integrity of all of that.
We're going to talk about the implications for education soon. I'm curious, before we talk about education, to talk more globally, why do you think there's been such a backlash against the idea of cryptocurrency, against NFTs? It seems like every time you open up the news or check out a news magazine, there's some article decrying it or the death of it, and there's been a massive backlash to this idea of decentralization, or at least a backlash to NFTs and crypto. But the idea of decentralization actually seems pretty good. So why that backlash?
Some of the backlash is justified. There are plenty of groups getting together trying to use this technology for quick profit. It's called a pump and dump, where you create a coin and it conceptually has some sort of value in implementation, but there's no actual proof of the implementation, just conceptually. And that will go from like 0.000001 all the way to like, even if it's like, a fraction of a penny, that like level of growth could make someone a millionaire overnight. But on the backs of all of the people that have to carry the bag, which is a term for the person that buys in a little too late and sells a little too late and ends up being the one that is allowing these others to profit. So there is some things like that, and anyone that's going to try to like avoid that kind of reality, they're just not being genuine about it. But when you look at what crypto is able to do, it is able to allow for societies across the globe to connect in a more efficient way, to transact, to engage in commerce. You have a global team working. We have a team right now that stretches in Europe, Dubai, Hawaii, Singapore, with the Ed3 work that we're doing. And when it's time to pay people for their hard work, it's like, oh, this wire transfer and this and that, and switching to this currency, and oh, don't do the dollar yet because the dollar is, or our currency's down. It's a headache. And so what this technology is trying to do is basically say, if we can build a network that has some sort of purpose, we can then extract value from what that network does. So for Bitcoin, the value is quick, easy financial transactions. Even with Ethereum is being making it possible for people to transact and trade digital goods in a way where all of the parameters are set and unchangeable with the contracts. You don't have to worry that you're going to get something that you didn't sign up for, or the terms are going to change. So when the war in Ukraine happens, the amount of time it would take to raise fiat currency and deliver it on the ground to the people that were trying to support the people of Ukraine, they already 2 weeks prior to that had raised in about 2 minutes, I think $50 million in Ethereum, transferred it in about 5 minutes to these different nonprofits that we're trying to support, and those people were able to take that, convert that, and get things done. Because we're still not in a world where you could actually go buy goods with Ethereum, but we're getting there. So it's really trying to make sure that people understand that these cryptocurrencies that are attached to these large blockchain systems are trying to do something good in the world. But you have to do your own research. You have to understand, well, wait a second. Why am if I don't know anything about cryptocurrency and all of a sudden I hear about this thing, it's most likely too late. And you should definitely not buy into, the next dog. You got Dogecoin, you got Shiba Inu, what's the next puppy that's gonna, break onto the scene. So there's a lot of these kind of crazy fanciful, I don't know, I'm losing words here, but it's like that's not what we're trying to do here, and that's where the news is going to pick up. But if you look historically on the Bitcoin chart and on the Ethereum chart, even though we just had an all-time high and we're now at pre 2021 prices, it is a up down, but it is moving in a massive upward motion. And so you'll see in the next probably 18 months, Bitcoin and Ethereum specifically are going to root themselves in as a legitimate method of commerce, of transaction, and of storing of value. So that was a long-winded answer. Did I even answer?
Sure, yeah. And you clearly have a positive outlook, or at least I think you look optimistically at the possibilities for Web3. I think I am probably safe in assuming that there are lots of folks who are watching right now who just don't know what to make of the information and maybe cannot make sense of the information right now. I wonder if you also think that potentially we are sort of focused on the wrong thing. We're always focused, it seems like, on the positives and the negatives. We're having debates about, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Do you think it's just inevitable? Because if it's inevitable that Web3 is the future of the internet, then to me it seems like that as educators, we have to care about it because it's the reality that we're about to face. So do you see it as still in a phase where it's a possibility, or is it the inevitable future, and thus, as educators, we have to care about it because that's the future of the world?
It is absolutely inevitable. Absolutely inevitable. We're not talking about are we going to be in a metaverse environment in the next 3 to 6 months? We're not talking about that. Web3 is simply a evolution of most of what the internet exists as today: social media, content creation, storing of data, and just doing it in a way where it's much more empowering. So there is I think the best way that people can go about this is try to find practical use cases as they research. So don't look at the extremes on either side. When I have conversations with people about, the environmental impact of Bitcoin or Ethereum networks on the world, I don't use Cointelegraph and Bitcoin Magazine as sources, because I feel that those sources, even though I believe that the data that they put together and compile is accurate, it's not setting up a balanced discussion. Just like you shouldn't use an extreme on the other side that's only doomsday when we're discussing these conversations. But I think it's the use cases. So for educators, they need to learn about this for two reasons. Number one is there's really cool opportunities for educators in Web3. And a lot of the work that we do is about making sure that they have new professional pathway opportunities where there's some cool side hustles that might not be utilizing your educational pedagogical skills, but Web3 needs those. And so unfortunately, a lot of teachers have to have a second job. But here we are, where you could directly use your skills in this new ecosystem. The other thing is that if the students don't have us as trusted advisors for this, even if you think that this is not a real thing, if you are learned in it, your students will appreciate and admire it. And if they don't learn it from you, they're going to learn it from the influencer on TikTok, or they're going to learn it from the athlete or celebrity on Instagram. And those people don't care about these students like we do.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the argument that wins me over to it. This idea that it's just reality. And because that is an argument that I make about teaching with technology. You can look at the role of technology right now in the world on broadly from a negative perspective and think that it has had a net negative impact on society. That does not discount the fact that it has a major role in society. Therefore, it's vital that we're teaching students about it. Ignoring it doesn't somehow make it go away. If we are scared about the implications of students being in different social media applications, which we probably should be, then as educators, we should be teaching students about that, not trying to act as though it does not exist. If you are a teacher, I do want to hear about some, because you do believe that actually there are ways that teachers can engage students in actually creating NFTs. Let's talk about that in a second. I'm curious if you are a teacher listening right now, if a teacher is listening right now and they want to just help prepare their students for this reality, does that necessitate creating NFTs, or is there a way to teach students and prepare them and help them understand this inevitable third wave, not second wave, of the internet, so that they are doing an adequate job, or doing the job that they want to do, I should say, to prepare students for their futures?
Yeah, absolutely. I think creating an NFT is a really awesome experience. We just launched an NFT with Ed3 educators, and it takes an incredible amount of time and energy. But I think there's more to it than just creating. I think that and especially for educators that are a little bit hesitant, I think jumping into the creation and the minting, which is a term for putting that visual token onto the blockchain, that's like, I think, overwhelming, but also like there's so many steps that need to happen before that. And I shared in my session earlier this week about 3 different ways that I think NFTs are going to impact the future of education. And the first is art, just giving more of an emphasis on art and art programs and artists, young artists. This is the STEM moment for artists, like maybe 10 years ago, the code.org, everyone can code, all of those really mission-driven type, bringing the computer science experience to as many students as possible. We need to have that with art and design. And so the art is a big piece about really making sure that people understand the power of the art. NFTs aren't just expensive JPEGs. NFTs are a visual marker that allows you to have a sense of belonging to a community and an ecosystem. And the NFT actually is a token that unlocks access to these avenues of experience. But those are only valuable because of the intentionality in art and design, the storytelling elements, really getting students to understand how to be good storytellers in a visual, verbal, and written way, really focusing on giving students opportunities to write about what they want to write about. I've had so many conversations with students as late as 8th grade, even early high school, that said they've never had an opportunity to write an essay about what they want to write about. Teachers do like open free write, a little journaling, but actually to write about something that they care about. So these types of skills need to be built. If NFTs go away tomorrow, which I don't think they will, but let's say they would, I don't want to have conversations and prepare and workshop with teachers on the technology itself, and I've never done that in my career. It's always about what are these evergreen principles. So you have your art, you have your storytelling mechanisms and building those strong communication skills, and then you have community building. What does community building look like? What are the skills needed to help young people understand how to foster community, how to get buy-in into a mission, and why would people want to be a part of something you care about? Those require really succinct and high quality communication skills to be able to do that. So we're not even talking about NFTs, but then, here we are, and then NFTs just fit right in. So that is where educators need to be starting when we're thinking about NFTs. And if you're like an awesome art teacher and you want to like try something, DM me, because I'd be happy to help you, but it's more than that.
You also believe it's a way for schools to address funding issues, art programs to address funding issues, correct? Where it's conceivable that a school could sell students NFTs to be able to raise more money for the arts, which, as we know, have been gutted financially. Can you explain how that would work?
Yeah, so there's definitely ways that I can see NFTs having a utility for fundraising. It's hard in a public institution. There's a lot of red tape. There's a lot of bureaucracy. Who owns it? How, who owns the NFT? Who has or not who owns the NFT? The person who buys it owns it. But who is the creator? Is it the student? Is it the school? Who does the student get any of that money? What does that look like? Because you can fundraise the program or you can fundraise the artists themselves. Are we doing scholarship runs for art students to get a full ride based on the art that they create and put into the world? Because I think it's something like there are 11 out of the top. This is actually not a real stat. I can't remember the exact numbers. Let's say it's like 11 out of the top 100 NFT creators are under 18, because there are 11 of them. I just don't know what the snapshot of that, but there are 11, and 6 of them are from developing countries. And they just put their art out there. They leverage social media to build community around it, and they're thriving. So students don't need to wait for this magical moment to engage in commerce. It's just a little bit complicated when you engage, in a school environment. But I think that for a company that would feel inspired to financially support a local school, so what do? They put a little banner on the chain link fence outside of the school. But what if they had an NFT? And they had an NFT that they could print out and frame and put in their office, put in their in their location, and then they can have that on their Facebook page. They can have that on their social media. They can have that on their website. They're a part of contributing. So NFTs have this sense of belonging and ownership that gets people to feel like they're part of something bigger. And I think that can, with the proper bureaucratic massaging, happen. But because we had this conversation with the superintendent, and he was excited, but he's I have no idea how we could get this through the finance office.
Right. I'm getting the signal to wrap it up. I got to ask you one last question. So you've been out in this world, or you've been involved in this world of EdTech, technology in education, pushing education forward. You know how challenging it is, how challenging it has been to get schools to adopt just basic practices to bring teaching and learning into the 21st century, and now we're deep into the 21st century. We're just now getting to a place where students have more predictable access to a device and the internet, and it seems like education is always still kind of at the trailing end of innovation, just the way that it works. How realistic is it for education right now for there to be any kind of widespread adoption of any kind of practice related to Web3? I mean, are you optimistic about that, or are you concerned that education is going to kind of fall farther and farther behind and sort of miss this moment?
I think we're early with Web3 in general, and I do appreciate the comment on education always being delayed. It really is. The opportunity is now. There's no reason why we need to make the same mistake that we did with the social media iterations of the internet, and even just the information superhighway iterations of the internet. In general, what I have seen from this conference is that there are people really excited and curious about this. The shirt that I'm wearing is a welcome note to just come have a conversation, and it's been incredibly positive. I guess the people that were negative just avoided me. They didn't come and try to debate me about it. But I think that there are institutions, there are organizations, there are districts that are excited about this, and we are partnering with a number of those across the country right now, and we do see that in the next 18 months we're going to have a lot of highlights for how Web3 was brought into schools in an intentional way that's focused on teaching and learning, not focused on, making everyone rich on NFTs, although that would be cool too. But it's the evergreen elements. But there is a big interest in it. Obviously not enough. There's, prioritization-wise, I don't expect everyone to be ranking this in the top 3 like me, but it's the future is bright, and I'm excited.
Well, Michael, if people who are watching this right now want to learn more about you, learn more about your work, where should they go?
So the Tech Rabbi at any social platform, but Twitter's my main space. My DMs are open. And then on Twitter, Ed3 Educators would be a great place if you're Web3 curious to join our Discord, join our community of educators. Almost 1,000 educators right now, every day, having conversations about Web3 in our Discord community, and it's growing every week. So we're excited to have more part of this conversation.
I think it's important to always check our own blind spots and examine our own potential for closed-mindedness. So I've appreciated the conversation. I look forward to continuing it in the future. Thanks so much, Michael Cohen, for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.